International News Review.
Welcome back to Saturday mornings here on Money FM 89.3. Glenn and Neil with you. International News Review. Welcome to Steve Okun. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Glenn. Good morning, Neil.
How are you doing?
Oh, anxiously awaiting the Prime Minister's speech at noon.
Awesome.
And very quickly, Steve, what's the T-shirt?
Well, the T-shirt is when you donate to the Harry Chapin Foundation, you get a gift, and this is one of the T-shirts you can get.
Jason, a new documentary out about your dad, Harry Chapin. When in doubt, do something on Amazon Prime. Really amazing life that your father lived. I mean, having grown up in the U.S., I knew him very well and loved his music back in the 70s and 80s and beyond, of course. Give us, for those who might not know your dad other than a couple of his most famous songs, Cats in the Cradle and Taxi, tell us a bit about your dad and how this foundation got started to honor him.
Well, he was a one of a kind in the sense that he grew up in a very artistic family, and an uncle got him a job as a film writer, a filmmaker. So he was destined to be a filmmaker before he had his record contract. And so when you think about his songs, he was known as writing story songs. And so I think that film background really helped him as a writer, as a performer. And so he had a 10-year career and did 200 concerts a year and played a lot of music with his brothers and toured all over the country, toured overseas, many different countries. And he about halfway through his career, he was prodded by my mother to do more than just be a famous musician. You know, if you really care about a lot of these issues that you talk about, you have to do something. So he decided that he wanted to focus on hunger and poverty, and he had developed a very close friendship with an American DJ on a New York radio station. His name is Bill Ayers, and they co-founded an organization called Why Hunger that was focused at the root causes of hunger. They knew there were lots of great organizations that were doing a fantastic job distributing food to those who needed it, but they needed to create their own organization where they could really educate people on the root causes of hunger and try and get more people involved to do something. And then my father also decided that he had to do something in Washington, D.C. So he spent a lot of time down there, and he met with Republicans and Democrats, and he made his case. And there's a great story that's talked about in the documentary about how he was a pest. He would go to the different congressional offices, and they got tired of seeing him, so they wouldn't let him in anymore. So he'd hang out in the men's room and wait for, different members of Congress to come in, and then he'd pitch them and say, look, you guys need to do more. And he was very close friends with Senator Leahy from Vermont.
Patrick
and they
Leahy.
worked together, and they convinced President Carter to create the first presidential commission on world hunger. And there was a lot of momentum, and they got a lot of other people involved. And my father also started another organization called Long Island Cares, which is a food bank serving Long Island. And he did all of that before he passed away. And then after he passed away, we started the Harry Chapin Foundation to continue his legacy.
Jason, it's such an extraordinary legacy and such an extraordinary amount of work that he achieved in such a short space of time. Millions and millions of records sold, Grammy Award winner, Grammy Hall of Fame, and then, of course, you mentioned there the Presidential Commission on World Hunger. What I want to know is, what was it like being his son during this time? What are your memories? Do you remember the artist or the activist or a combination of the two?
So when you were around him, there was always a lot going on. So you would be watching sports events, and then it was halftime, and you go out in the backyard and you'd play football or baseball or tennis, and then he would be on the phone trying to set up another project, another benefit concert. And then I went to a lot of his concerts and toured with him and went to the studio. So it was a little bit of everything, but he had an amazing amount of energy, and he was an incredible optimist, always trying to bring people together, always trying to create something. And he spent a lot of time trying to convince other artists, Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, many others to get involved and to support the cause. And Why Hunger created a separate program called Artists Against Hunger and Poverty. So when they tour around the country, Why Hunger connects them to local food banks and food pantries, and they do put donations, collections at concerts. So it's really become a great movement.
It's such an amazing story. And your dad, of course, those of us who knew him as a musician, just an amazing bard, if I can use that word, with him. And his untimely passing was such a shock. I can't imagine what it must have been for your family, but certainly to all of his fans. And in fact, I just wanted to show this. I have had this story from the New York Times now since the day after he passed away. I made a photocopy of it, and I have always kept it with me because it made such an impact on me. I was just in 7th grade at the time. But we all just loved his music so much. We sang it on the playground. Kids around the world. I grew up in the Chicago area. Kids around the country just loved what he did. And at that time, we were sort of aware of him doing other things. We would see him in the news every now and then, like you say, in Washington or whatever. But we didn't really get a sense of the depth of his commitment to making social change. And I want to bring in Steve because Steve, you two were very good friends, which is one of the great reasons we got Jason to come on the show today. But you two were involved in politics together in the early days. And tell us about your friendship with Jason, Steve.
Well, Jason and I met when we were interns for Governor Cuomo. And, we're so old. We're not talking about the most recent Governor Cuomo. We're talking about the father, Mario Cuomo.
Yeah,
and this is where you make a difference is you find a place where you can make a difference. And I think, for me and Jason, it was politics and government at that time, but you do it through NGOs, you do it through foundations, you can do it, as an artist. There's all different ways that people need to find their way to make a difference. And that's, one of the things that Jason and I have always had that same focus is it's government that has to be part of the solution here. And that's why, the legislation that's pending in front of the Congress right now that the Democrats, need to pass is going to address a lot of those root causes when it comes to family and medical leave, when it comes to child care credits, when it comes to, universal education for community colleges, all those things that are in this legislation. And it's why I think I could speak for Jason. We're both optimists that this is going to pass because the Democrats have to do something, to use, Harry Chapin's word.
Steve, maybe to put it into context, what would you say was Harry Chapin's legacy impact on not only American society musically, but also, as you say, with the activism and demand and calls for change? What was his impact? Well,
I think, I think maybe the last concert I was at was Bruce Springsteen in Australia, because I'd always go down to Australia to see Bruce when he was there. And you bring your cans of food. You're in Sydney, Australia, right, or Adelaide or Melbourne, and you bring your cans of food. And Bruce is hooked up with a local food bank to address the hunger and poverty. And as Jason said, you can draw a straight line from Bruce Springsteen in Australia, in 2019 to Harry Chapin in the 1970s out on Long Island. And that's so that legacy lives on through other artists too.
Yeah, Jason, back to you. Talk to us a little bit more specifically about the documentary, what we're going to see in it, and there's a great teaser on Facebook Live. I've put the teaser for it in the comments section so people can see that. And by the way, Jason, you're welcome to put whatever links you'd like to put in there for your dad or for the other projects you're working on. But tell us about what we'll see in this documentary, how it was filmed, and I know a lot of historic footage in it as well.
So it came together quite quickly. It was somebody, Rick Horn and his partner, S.A. Barron, and they were doing some work with Bill Hares, again, co-founder of Why Hunger. And they had a conversation, and Rick said to Bill, how come nobody's done a film about Harry Chapin? And he said, I don't know. And Bill said, well, why don't you make one? So Bill had Rick get in touch with me, met with my mother. We liked what they were going to do. They were going to focus on his music. They were going to focus on his life, but they were also going to focus on his humanitarian work. And so whenever we asked anybody if they could be a part of it, we got an yes. Springsteen, Pat Benatar, Billy Joel. We got Robert Lamb. We got Bob Geldof. And so it just all came together. And it's great when they tell their stories about when they met my father and what they thought of him. And sometimes they tell really funny stories about how he drove them nuts, but they believed in what he was doing. And the great thing about the film is that it's a positive story. It's not about a train wreck. It's about somebody who wanted to make something of his life and to do something that he thought would benefit a lot of other people. So it's very inspiring, and proceeds benefit the Harry Chapin Foundation and Why Hunger.
Well, Jason, you've mentioned something that I wanted to discuss, which is we've talked about his impact on us, on the music scene, and on society generally. But how is he viewed within the music industry? What sort of things did they say when they were talking about him in the documentary? I know you probably don't want to give too much away, but how do other musicians view him?
I think a lot of musicians appreciated him because they recognized that he wrote really good songs, and they could relate to the story songs. But he was also known for throwing great concerts. He did about 200 concerts a year, and about half of them were benefits. And they were long concerts. I mean, he just loved to play, didn't like to get off the stage. But when he did get off the stage, he would go out into the lobby and meet with fans, sign autographs, whatever they wanted to do, just chat with them, get to, have conversations with them. And so he was all about relationships. And in the documentary, his former manager, Ken Cragen, talks about how my father inspired him to put together We Are the World and Live Aid and Hands Across America. And so it's just fascinating that, a lot of people point to what my father was doing and said they could really relate to it and they wanted to support it. And so the only reason why he has a legacy that we could talk about today is because there were a lot of fans who stuck with him even after he died. They continued to play the music and go to the benefit, the tribute concerts, but also a lot of musicians said we want to support him and his legacy. And then there were a lot of, board members and supporters, donors. So it was really a collective effort, and so grateful for that because, it's fascinating to see that, he's been gone 40 years and people are still talking about him, which is what he would have wanted.
Yeah.
I would just add, and Jason's part of that legacy too. I mean, Jason is, works for county government to do, that's where the work gets done, right, in the United States. It's, Congress debates these bills. Should it be 6 trillion? Should it be 3.5 trillion? Should it be 2.5 trillion? But, the work gets done in local government, and Jason's been involved in local government in addition to all the work he's been doing on the foundation, in addition to having been in office. And so that's part of the story and why this is the legacy has. It's not a legacy. I mean, it's just it's ongoing, and it's continual action of what our country and what all countries need.
And Jason, we're going to finish up on you because our time is coming to an end, unfortunately, as we get near the top of the hour. But 40 years on, we the problems that your dad was fighting against are as bad or worse than ever in terms of scope and scale, size. And so many people are working against poverty, against homelessness, against the disaffected people. And yet we still find ourselves, from my perspective, slipping behind on this. How do we really push the needle, push the ball forward, move the needle, whatever cliche we can use on this topic, to come to some sort of a just society where people are not starving, where people are not homeless? How does that happen?
Well, two parts. First, I think the pandemic put a spotlight on how bad hunger is in America and how much worse it got because people lost their job. They lost, their income. And so I think that brought out a lot of generosity and a lot of awareness and a lot of interest in doing something. And at the same time, I think the Biden administration is trying to take the long view. They're trying to say, look, we're not going to just, try and get through this year's budget. As Steve pointed out, we're looking at some significant legislation that could significantly change the way we address these issues. So invest in kids, invest in healthcare, invest in infrastructure, invest in things where we know it will make a difference. It will improve people's lives. And if you improve people's lives, then they're going to be more productive, and you're going to have to spend, less money supporting all these programs that have been supporting them for all these years.
Yeah, let's hope that message gets through. We do have to leave it there. Steve, thanks so much for being on today. Jason, special thanks to you and the foundation. We want to encourage everybody to get on Amazon.com and rent or buy that new documentary that's coming out. What are your expectations, just real quickly, Jason, for how it's going to be received or how it's been received already?
Oh, it's been very well received. Great ratings, lots of people seeing it, and so we're really pleased, and I hope more people see it. It's great when people tell me they were on an airplane, they saw it, or they saw it with some friends, and so love for people to spread the word if they like it, because it's a great message.
It's great. The documentary,
Fantastic.
When in Doubt, Do Something, featuring Harry Chapin, of course. Hey, thanks to you both for being on with us today. Hope you'll come back and visit again soon, Jason.
All right, great. Thanks, guys.
Great seeing you, Jace. See you guys.
You
International
too. Take
News
care.
Review.
Wonderful chat. Sorry, we could talk with him all day.
Yeah, I mean, inspirational chat. I mean, you look at the man's legacy. It was a relatively short career.
He said 10 years. I didn't realize it was only 10 years he was performing.
11 albums, 200 concerts a year, 14 singles, Grammy Award-winning artist. People have legacies 40, 50 years. They didn't achieve what Harry Chapin did in 10 years.
Unbelievable. Well, anyway, I hope you will get a chance to look at that documentary. And we've put the links in Facebook Live, and please do that.